and my sister.
I'm telling you.
Crazy.
Come on.
All right.
Oh, okay. So I promised, and I'm going to do it because I have good friends that I want to throw a shout out to. Sergio, Elizabeth, and Oscar, good friends of mine and clients, but good friends too. And also a shout out to our good friend of Progressive Soup and good friend of the Marty Heiser show, Tony. So Tony, shout out to you. Sergio, Elizabeth, and Oscar, shout out to you. And with that, we're off. Well, no, not off. We're not.
We're on.
No. Wait. We're always a little bit off, but So Emily has seen the movie 50 Shades of Grey. You haven't seen it?
I haven't.
No, you've heard about it, though.
I read.
Oh, this is really going to be the second or third hand friend of a friend of a friend of a friend thing. So, yeah, I read the book.
I read the book.
50 Shades of Grey, and I remember it was, it didn't excite me at any rate. So, but it was pretty spicy though, from what I remember.
Right.
But so I made it to a movie, and Marty was here last week. Marty Heiser, a good friend of the show, Marty Heiser was here last week, and we were play acting a discussion between Jesus Christ and Ayn Rand, and for the first half hour I did one and he did the other, and the second half hour he did the other and I did the one, and then Wednesday night we did an hour special and rehashed the whole thing. Right. And the only conclusion I came to is that Ayn Rand stinks and Jesus Christ. How could Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, lose an argument to someone that basically said, screw the poor, if they can't make it, let them die? And Other Humorous Observations, as I recall, was one of the books that we talked about.
She was an atheist too.
And she was an atheist. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But we were all Christians here, Marty, Emily, and I, and we kind of sort of took this side of at least the side of Jesus Christ, not necessarily the side of the worst side of Christianity, because every religion has its flakes and its nuts and its lunatics that think they have to kill other people in the name of their religion. So 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
You start the discussion because I don't know what we're going to talk about.
No, I just think that at first the novel, it seems very erotic, and a lot of people went to see the movie because they thought, to spice up their love life, or it came out as being very erotic. But talking to people, women especially, the view I got was what people weren't talking about was a lot about S&M and sadomasochism and cruelty to women, and well, in this case, but it was how a woman's journey where a young girl falls in love with this older man who has money and he's successful, and it was really about her, and they get involved in this S&M sexual relationship, and
I kind of remember that out of the book.
And she finally has to stand up for herself and say stop. And so it's just interesting because in the media, everyone's making it just focusing on the erotic aspects, but not really on the S&M and
the notion that in the final analysis, it's about a woman who gets taken advantage of and finally stands up for herself. And we were talking about this with Marty last week, and Marty's not here to defend his position, but I'm going to speak to it at any rate. Marty basically said, well, women like the book, they like the they like the movie, and therefore women like to be treated like that. They like to be taken care of by men. And we sort of, as I recall, said, what?
Right. No, and then
our position, our take on the movie or on this story, at any rate, because we didn't see the movie, but we read the book. Our take on the story was very different than Marty's take on the story.
Right, and then I'd mentioned how there was I had remembered when I was in Italy teaching English. I had first I started out studying, and I studied with this Christian couple, and it was this Christian couple, and they had come to Italy to start these. They were missionaries, and they would start up these makeshift churches. And I remember being in their home. This was in Ancona, and there was a quote on the wall.
Quick shout out to Ancona's Market in Ridgefield, our secret sponsor this week. But go ahead.
And there was this. The wife had painted this quote on her wall, and it was a grapevine, and I remember them being some Bible quote about I felt it was saying like, a woman is compared to a grapes on a vine and producing fruit, and I just remember kind of thinking, oh wow, I'd never thought of a woman as bearing fruit, and so I looked it up, and I'd mentioned that in our last show.
No, they didn't have a picture somewhere in the house of a banana and making a comparison to comparing a man to a banana.
It was definitely grapes on a vine, and they were on the wall. And I had mentioned that to Marty. I said, doesn't the way, in the Bible, there's something about women being compared to grapes on a vine, and I said, so if a woman basically doesn't bear fruit, does that make her not a woman? I guess if she doesn't bear fruit as a woman, I guess women, we all create something somehow. So anyway, I went home, and I was sure there was something in the Bible, and I found it was Psalm 128:3. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine of thine house. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children like olive plants around your table. So it was just one thing, but they write about women many ways in the Bible. But I could see it one way, and anyway, just that, how are women seen? Are they just seen as there to bear fruit?
And even if back in the day, if that was sort of the case, aren't we all in every aspect of our life subject to evolution, where we change, and as a culture we change, as the need to have children becomes less important when we have a population which is certainly large. Do we really need to? Because think about back when a million years ago. It's a million years ago, and you got cave folks, and now Basil and I were talking about this. So I listen to Basil a lot because he seems to know a lot on the subject, even though he never had any children, at least none that he knew about. He was prowling around the neighborhood a little while when he was a younger guy. But back a million years ago, you have a very limited number of people, and you have a lot of ways that you could die if you were a person. You had a lot of predatory animals out there, and you're basically living out in the. You don't have four walls around you. Maybe you've got three walls. Maybe you've got a cave to hide in and protect yourself, but it's still open air in the front of it. And so, Homo sapiens, people, had a lot of ways that they could die. Not a lot of people. So the species for the first, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of years, probably was fairly close to extinction on many occasions. Many occasions where there'd be a disease or something, and the population of human beings would dwindle down, and the only way to beef the population back up was by having a lot of kids.
Right, of course.
And of all the kids that you had,
that's true.
A lot of them died very young.
Right, because of plagues and I see
plagues, what you're saying. The babies getting carted away by large predators.
Right. Food, not having enough food, maybe.
Yeah, famine, all kinds of stuff, and maybe back then, I'll throw a number out. 1 child out of 5 survives.
Right.
So women had to have a lot of children.
Right.
Just by the statistical knowledge that if you had 5 kids, maybe one of them would survive till adulthood.
Right.
And the other 4 would die from any of a number of things. And of course, you had the volcanic, other issues that that caused mass extinctions, not just biological ones, but also you had a lot of people froze to death. You had a couple of ice ages in between a million years ago and now, so people had to migrate, which has a lot of danger attached to it when you're nomadic and you're traveling hundreds of miles to survive. So therefore, people had this. As a species, we have this biological initiative, and we still do. It's built into us.
Yeah.
This biological initiative to propagate, to have kids, to regenerate our species, even though now there's no need to.
Right.
You could have if half the adults in the world had kids and had 1 or 2 kids, we'd go on. The species would go on.
Right, of course.
There'd still be plenty of us.
Right.
But back then it was very different, and so people had this biological urge, if you will, to, oh boy, here we go again.
Is it Basil the Buddha cat?
No, it's Basil's Chinese cousin.
Oh.
Okay, hold on.
No, I agree that it's just different.
Okay.
Definitely. I do agree that times have, at one time, and yeah, I'm sure men still do feel that a woman needs to be taken care of, but I think now women are becoming more educated.
Yeah,
and
women were and are,
right.
I guess, generally a little less strong than men, but not significantly. And obviously, with women having the ability to learn self-defense and things like that, women can certainly be physically just as strong as men. And it's said, and I think it's true, that when a woman is faced with a crisis situation, you have this adrenaline rush kick in, and there's stories about
superhuman strength.
A child gets stuck under a car, and a woman lifts the car up.
It's like that fight or flight.
Oh, exactly!
Response.
It's incredible
surge
of energy.
Yeah, adrenaline.
that men don't really need, and then because of that don't really have that kind of surge of energy that women can have.
Right.
So anyway, so everything's very different than it was a million years ago.
Right.
Certainly very different than it was even 10,000 years ago. You don't have that, but you still have this biological initiative built into us to have children.
Right, of course.
And Margaret Mead. Right. And I think we had somebody on the show a while back, a long time ago. We had somebody on that talked about Margaret Mead and how Margaret Mead studied the Polynesian people.
Oh, the Maori or the Samoans, all those,
And she found out, this thing that we talk about, this mythical 7-year itch thing that we talked about in the great Marilyn Monroe movie and some other literature. The 7-year itch is actually accurate. It really does exist because the Maori were a very small culture, and they had to beef up their numbers periodically. And because of that, men and women, when they got to right around 7 years of marriage to each other, they're like, all right, enough of this sexual activity. But they still recognized the need to have more people.
Right.
So couples would split apart, and one find a new partner, and the other one find a new partner, and continue to have children.
Right.
So the 7-year itch that is really, in fact, not just some myth. It really exists.
Wow.
So
must be based on something.
Yeah, that need to propagate to have more kids.
Well, even my dad used to tell me that my grandmother told him that in the village where my grandparents and came from, that because the villages are so small.
Is that the one that wanted to call you Gina?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Another story.
Anyway, so that to pair up young men and women, they would lock a boy and a girl in a room together and just hope something would happen. And I was horrified.
Hope that they took to each other.
Yeah, hopefully.
Now, I
was horrified.
Never read this. I never read this, but I've heard that the Pilgrims did something fairly similar to that. When I say the Pilgrims, I mean the more traditional, more like the Amish and people like that. What they would do is they would take a young man and a young woman that they're trying to matchmake, and they would have them in a bed, but with a divider between the two sides of the bed.
Okay.
So they could get used to being with each other at night, and they could converse with each other.
Interesting.
And have this barrier to keep them from any. But at the same time, they could get to know each other as human beings and presumably find some common interest, and because of that, be interested in getting married to one another.
No. I mean, I think romantic love.
An odd kind of dating, if you will. Kind of a dating kind of thing.
I think romantic love and getting married for love is a new new concept, in the past.
I think it is.
Yeah. I guess before.
So back to the 50 Shades.
Yeah, okay. So, I think that a lot of what they're talking about in the media is how, I've had like some actress was protesting and she was saying, oh, women don't see this movie because it's very sexist about women, and she wanted to get women not to see it because it's a really, they're portraying, in the media they're saying, oh, it's all about sex and erotic and spicing up your marriage, but there are some themes I've heard people say it's about women standing up and saying no,
If that's the bottom line,
violence.
if that's something, and if that, as you see it that way, saw it that way in the book, and I sort of agree.
Right.
I sort of see that thread of thought in the book. If that's a lesson to be gained from the story, that's a good lesson.
Yeah, and I don't.
The bottom line, women going through being taken advantage of by somebody that's stronger than them, who happens to be the boss and uses their power. And not like this doesn't happen in real life a lot anyway, where the boss, puts the make on an employee and she's afraid to. As a matter of fact, what happens both ways.
She was interviewing him for a college newspaper.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was her boss. She was interviewing him.
But he was in a position of power.
Right. Yeah.
But in the real world, in business, it happens both ways, really, because quite often, if you have, and this is happening more as women become bosses too, you have a woman boss using her position of strength, her position of power, to manipulate young male employees and say, well, hey, I'm the boss, so you want to keep your job. You do what I want you to do.
Yeah, no, there was
it's a power thing.
How Horrible Bosses. That was one of the themes. These three men wanted to get rid of their bosses, and one of them, Jennifer Aniston, played a dentist.
Oh, Kristen loves Jennifer Aniston. I like her too. Yeah, she's a good.
But it's interesting.
She's a good actor.
Because because you don't think of women. Normally, it's men. Traditionally, it's the men that. Traditionally, it's the men you see in the position of power.
Because it used to be that way.
Yeah, but I think in that case, you get a young woman, and this rich, wealthy, good-looking man is seducing her, and you're young, you have stars in your eyes, and it's like a coming of age. You have to learn a woman growing and standing up for herself and realizing she's worth.
And isn't that what rape's all about? The whole notion of rape being about a strong person taking advantage of a weaker person?
Yeah.
It's kind of what it is.
Right, yeah.
It's a power play. That's why 80-year-old women get raped. It's got nothing to do with sex. It's got to do with the strong...
Violence,
strong...
Control.
Violence and control of less powerful people by more powerful people.
Yeah, so it's definitely something I'm surprised they're not talking more about in regards to this.
They might be missing the whole point of it. They might be missing really the whole point. I'd be curious what the author would have to say about that.
Yeah, I am curious what she would have.
Who was the author of the book? And then, I don't remember the name of the author.
Me either.
Well, anyway, whoever the author is, if the author could shed some light on that they could hopefully...
But it's a trilogy,
so there's two more in the
coming. Yeah, two more. And in the end, actually, the man and the woman end up together and having a child together.
Really?
By the third book, yeah.
The ones that in the beginning are the interviewer and the power broker?
Yeah. They have a child together.
So they go through all kinds of...
ups and downs of their relationship, I guess. Yeah.
So hopefully he learns... that to amend his behavior of being Mr. Big Hotshot.
Right.
And she grows as a person, and
they both grow.
They end up growing together. and finding common ground, which is good.
Yeah.
That's what Progressive Soup's all about, right? Common ground. So why not in a relationship? Go ahead. So
no, it's true.
So without giving away too much of the plot, she goes to his business. She's
because her friend is the editor for the college newspaper, and her friend's sick, and it's her roommate. And she says, "Can you fill in for me, please?" So she goes to write the article instead. That's it. And then he just somehow seduces her, and she's not glamorous, or she's kind of mousy, and so probably having this good-looking, wealthy, mysterious bazillionaire interested in her. She's wow.
Yeah, probably
swept off her feet.
Yeah. Which can happen. That's understandable.
Because sometimes, often, women, they validate themselves by whether a man, by men.
And again, that cuts both ways because men, the same thing. Men dream about. They have their paragons of whether it be a Jennifer Aniston or a woman that they find attractive that has power through being a boss or being an actor or having some degree of acknowledgement from the world in general, and they think, well, gee, if I was only with that person, I would be a lot more. I would matter a lot more.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess apparently in this movie, when she does stand up to the Mr. Gray, and says, "No, I'm not going to take this anymore. This treatment." That's her way of standing up for herself and saying, I don't need a man to validate my existence and make me a woman or make me worthy. And
then later on, he comes to. How did he react? And without giving away too much of the plot, how does he react when she stands up to him? What is his? Is he stunned?
And in the movie, it's just her shutting the door on him. They don't really.
Okay, so you don't see his reaction.
No.
Okay.
No. I guess it's really not about him at all. It's all about her, really.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. We're at some interesting times now. Women, I think we're getting stronger and more independent and coming into our own, and
that's a good thing.
And so it's just interesting, which is why when we were talking about the Bible last week and Jesus and Ayn Rand, and I just remember this quote of this on this Christian missionary woman's wall about grapes on a vine, and I thought, wow, it was just so foreign from the way I was raised that
she was clearly just happy, just fulfilling her scriptural role.
Right. And that's, some women, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying it was just different how I see myself, but everyone's different, just accepting that each human being on this earth, we have fulfill different roles,
There's a lot of different ways to conduct your life, and a lot of good choices. And whichever good choice. This is what life is all about,
exactly.
I guess.
Nothing's wrong, nothing's right,
it's not that there is no right or wrong.
Good or bad.
We all know what's good and what's bad. We know what's good behavior and bad behavior. We all pretty much agree on that. But to acknowledge that there's a lot of good choices, that your choices in life shouldn't be limited to a very narrow.
Right, exactly.
They should be broader, a whole menu of good choices in life.
Yeah.
And all of us should accept others making whichever ones of those good choices that they find appropriate for themselves.
No, it's interesting, and and again, this thing about the Bible is, it talks about your wife, and I think not all women today are wives, or whether you're, like Marty Hayvetic quote saying a wife. She buys real estate, or she feeds the family, or, she does all this stuff. But what if, I wonder what they say in the Bible about women that aren't necessarily wives,
The only woman I could think of in the Bible, off the top of my head, that's not a spouse of somebody would be Mary Magdalene.
She was a prostitute. Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the Now look, and to the story by Dan Brown. Where the one that Tom Hanks is in. Is it Tom Hanks?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, the first movie takes place in the Vatican with the with the bomb and with the science versus religion notion.
Right, yeah.
But there's another one. I think it's part of that series of stories I think there are stories by Dan Brown. And the audience. So I don't see anybody in the audience raising their hand and saying no, it's not true. So I'm going with it.
Right.
So Dan Brown, I think, had a later book that was made into a movie, in which
angels and demons, or
I think it's Angels and Demons, where one of the principal characters is the last remaining descendant.
Okay.
I'm looking in the wrong direction.
Right.
One of the characters is the last living descendant of the marriage of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene.
Oh, wow.
I think that's a Dan Brown book.
Yeah.
I think that's Angels and Demons. I'm not sure, but I think, you see so many movies that they sort of blend together after a while. But I think that's the gist of the plot. And there are people out to kill her because she's the last remaining descendant from the bloodline bloodline of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And the notion that Mary Magdalene was kind of airbrushed out of the Last Supper.
Right.
We're going to come back and we're going to talk about this a little in a second show and some other stuff. We want to talk about a church Emily visited too recently, and her take on it. It's a very well-known church. She and we don't have anybody on from that church, so we're not giving them on this show an opportunity to counter and to talk about, but we'll have them on in a future show. But so this notion that this woman is the last remaining descendant of the marriage of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And because of that, there are nefarious forces people that are out to kill her. And Tom Hanks's character has to help keep her alive. And apparently there's the talk about the Last Supper where you have Jesus and the 12 disciples.
Exactly.
And one of those 12 disciples having mysteriously looking longish hair, and maybe in fact being Mary Magdalene rather than, maybe she's one of the 12 disciples, or maybe she's a 13th disciple.
Well, it's interesting because I actually went to see the Last Supper, L'Ultima Cena, and it's in Milan.
Okay.
And I saw it, and there is one of the disciple that looks very feminine. And if you ask the tour guide, he said that I think it was Da Vinci who painted that when he painted young men, he made them very feminine looking. Men had beards.
Say goodbye.
And so he wouldn't acknowledge that it was Mary Magdalene. He's like, no.